The crown hit the marble before Ella could breathe. 9 blue moonstones flashed at her feet, and every noble in the Wolf Kingdom watched their Luna become a woman without a seat. King Kane did not pick it up. He stood beside Amelia in the torchlight, his cousin's hand locked around his arm, and he said the words slowly, so no one could pretend they had misheard him. From tonight onward, Amelia will wear the silver crown. She will stand as my second Luna. A sound moved through the great hall. It was not a gasp. The sound was sharper than that. It was the sound of 300 throats swallowing scandal. Ella felt it pass over her skin. She felt the pity first, then the hunger, then the bright, cruel delight of people who had waited a year to see a seam split in a perfect marriage. Kane finally looked at her. His amber eyes were cold. They had once warmed when she entered a room. They had once followed her hands while she learned to sign royal decrees. Now they held the steady impatience of a man asking a servant to step aside. "Give her the crown, Ella," he said. The word struck harder than a slap. Ella sat in the Luna's chair at the end of the high table. The chair had silver wolves carved into the arms. Her name had been carved under the seat after the bonding ceremony, small and private, because Kane had laughed and said the palace should learn it would have her forever. Forever had lasted less than 2 years. Across the hall, Amelia lowered her lashes. She wore pale violet silk, a color too soft for what she had done. Her black hair fell in careful waves. Her lips trembled as if she were the one being harmed. "I never wanted to hurt her," Amelia whispered. She whispered loudly enough for the first 3 tables to hear. Kane turned his body toward her at once. That small movement answered every question in the hall. Ella rose from the chair. Her gray gown slid from the chair with a whisper. She heard a lady near the wine table murmur, "Her mark is dark again." Another answered, "It has not shown in months." A third said nothing, but her bracelets clicked together as she leaned forward for a better view. Ella lifted one hand to the back of her neck. The old bite mark lay there under her pinned hair, cold and dead. It had been gold once. It had glowed like sunrise when Kane touched her. Tonight it felt like a bruise pressed into bone. Kane's jaw tightened. "Do not make this harder," he said. That almost made her laugh. Harder than being summoned to the center of a hall full of nobles. Worse than that, her mate had named another Luna while the food still steamed on the table. Harder than watching the man who had once knelt to her demand that she remove the proof of that kneeling. Ella stepped down from the dais. One step, then another. The hall fell so quiet that the candles seemed loud. She reached up with both hands and removed the silver crown from her hair. It was heavier than she remembered. The moonstones caught the fire and threw cold blue sparks across her fingers. She had worn that crown through harvest councils, border petitions, winter feasts, and sleepless nights of war accounts. Men twice her age had tested her while it shone above them. Women had smiled under it, waiting for her to prove herself small. Kane had placed it on her head before all of them. Now he wanted her to hand it to Amelia like a ribbon cut from a discarded dress. Ella looked at the crown once. Then she placed it on the marble between them. The metal rang. Clean, final. Amelia's eyes widened. Kane stared down at it, then back at Ella. "Pick it up." "No," she answered. The word was not loud. It did not need to be. A noble lord coughed behind his cup. Someone shifted a chair. Amelia's soft expression faltered for half a heartbeat. Kane took one step closer. "Ella." "The Luna's seat," Ella said. "I do not want it." His brows drew together. She looked at the crown by her shoes. The crown lay between them. "I do not want it." Amelia's hand tightened on Kane's sleeve. Ella lifted her eyes to him. "And you, Kane?" "I do not want you either." The bond mark in her neck burned once. A thin white pain cut down her spine. It was so sudden that her vision flashed. Then the pain vanished, and with it went the last thread of warmth. Something inside her opened. Not healed, not whole. Open. Kane's mouth parted. For the first time that night, his face changed. The coldness cracked, and something frightened showed through. "You will not walk out," he said. Ella turned toward the doors. The guards looked at Kane. Kane did not speak, so they looked at the floor and let her pass. His voice followed her across the hall. "If you leave this palace tonight, you leave as nothing. Do you hear me? No crown waited now. Galarar and her chambers were gone. RN no protection." Still, she kept walking. "You are an omega from a tailor's lane," he snapped. "Where will you go without me?" At the doors, Ella stopped. The night air pressed through the cracks. It smelled of rain, horse sweat, and wet stone. It smelled honest. She turned her head just enough for him to hear her. "You have mistaken yourself for shelter." Then she opened the doors and stepped into the dark. Behind her, Amelia began to cry. Kane said her name once, hoarse and furious. "Ella." She did not turn back. Only when the doors closed did Kane feel the first blade of pain at his neck. It dug into the old mate mark so hard that his knees weakened. He grabbed the edge of the high table. Wine spilled across his hand. "Your Majesty," someone said. Kane could not answer. The mark behind his ear throbbed like a living wound. It had been dull for months, muted under layers of pride, anger, and Amelia's careful hands. Now it screamed. He looked at the closed doors. For one wild second, he wanted to run. Amelia sobbed beside him. "Brother, she humiliated you. She did it on purpose." The word brother slid through the hall like perfume over rot. Kane forced himself upright. His fingers were shaking. He hid them in Amelia's sleeve. "Let her go," he said. His voice sounded too thin. "She will come back." No one answered. Outside, Ella crossed the palace bridge alone. Rain had begun to fall. It darkened the shoulders of her gown and loosened the pins in her hair. Behind her, the palace blazed with gold windows and music that had started again too soon. At the far end of the bridge, she stopped and looked down at the river. The water ran black under the moon. A year ago, she had crossed that same bridge in a carriage drawn by 6 white horses. Bells had rung from every tower. Children had thrown spring flowers at the wheels. Kane had held her hand under the window curtain and laughed when petals landed in her lap. "Look at them," he had said. "They already love you." "They do not know me." "They will." He had sounded so certain. That was the part that hurt longest. Not the lies alone, but the certainty. The way he had made promises like stone and then treated them like wax. Ella walked on. She had no cloak, no purse except the few coins sewn into the hem of her underskirt because she had been a tailor before she was a queen, and a tailor trusted hidden stitches more than royal vows. She had no horse, no maid, no guard. By dawn, the city gates stood behind her. At noon, the road had turned to mud. By nightfall, her feet bled through her slippers. She kept walking. Before the crown struck the marble, before Amelia learned how softly a dagger could smile, before Kane forgot the sound of his own vow, Ella had been the girl everyone said fortune had lifted too high. She was born in Greyford, a border town where the kingdom thinned into pine woods and old wolf trails. Her father cut cloth for soldiers. Her mother embroidered wedding veils for girls who could not pay in coin. Ella learned early that fine seams could hide poverty, grief, and hunger if the stitches were clean enough. She was 17 when the royal hunt rode through Greyford. Kane Alpha was 24 then, newly crowned after his father's death. He came with 50 riders and a black wolf banner. People crowded the square to see him. Ella stood on a stool outside her father's shop, holding a basket of mended gloves. She saw him first as armor and amber eyes. Then the wind shifted. Every wolf in the square froze. Kane turned in the saddle. His gaze found her through smoke, horses, and market noise. The world narrowed to one breath. "Mate!" The word did not sound aloud, yet everyone heard it in the way his horse stopped dead and in the way Ella dropped the basket. He dismounted so quickly that his guards reached for their swords. He crossed the square, boots splashing through spring mud, and stopped before the tailor's daughter. She remembered how tall he was. Rain had clung to his cloak. She remembered thinking his hands looked too scarred for a king. "What is your name?" he asked. "Ella Vale," she said. He looked at her as if the answer mattered more than the crown on his head. 3 weeks later, he returned for her. Not with a command, not with a royal carriage sent by servants. Kane rode 300 miles himself through flooded roads and broken passes to ask her father for consent and her for choice. That was the story the kingdom loved. The Wolf King who found his fated mate in a tailor's lane, a high alpha kneeling in dust, the poor girl lifted into moonstone and silk. At their bonding ceremony, the great hall shone with spring branches and silver lamps. Nobles watched with tight smiles. Some called it romance, others called it madness. Kane did not care. He knelt before Ella in front of all of them. "You are my Luna," he said, placing the ancient silver crown on her head. "The crown is yours. The throne is yours. And I am yours." Ella had cried before she could stop herself. He kissed the tears from her cheeks, then bent his head and let her mark him in return. When his teeth entered the back of her neck, pain became heat, and heat became light. The bite mark bloomed gold. His matching mark answered beneath his collar. The nobles applauded because they had to. The servants smiled because they meant it. For 1 year, Kane made it easy to believe in forever. He kept her near during council. At first, she understood almost nothing. She sat beside him with damp palms while ministers argued over taxes, wolves, grain, marriages, patrols, bridges, and blood debts. Every seal looked the same. Every lord spoke as if she should already know the shape of his lands. Under the table, Kane found her hand. He pressed her fingers once when she looked lost. "Slowly," he murmured, while 2 dukes shouted over river rights. "You will learn the voices first, the words come after." At night, he spread maps across their bed and taught her where the northern forts stood, where the western mines cut into the hills, where the southern vineyards paid too little and complained too much. "This is not only my realm now," he said, guiding her finger along the border. "It is yours." She practiced the Luna's signature until ink stained the side of her hand. Kane would lean over her shoulder and correct the slant. "Make the line firmer. They read weakness into everything." "Even a name?" "Especially a name." Then he would kiss the place where her neck mark shone and ruin the lesson entirely. The maids whispered about them. Stable boys grinned when Kane carried her through the courtyard after a rainstorm because she had torn one slipper in the mud. In the kitchen, extra honey cakes appeared because the Luna liked them and the king liked watching her eat them. Ella did not become noble overnight. She still counted scraps. Even her own gloves still got mended by her hand. She still woke before dawn sometimes, expecting to hear her father sharpening shears downstairs. But Kane seemed proud of that. "You see what they miss," he told her once after she noticed winter boots had been ordered without enough lining for the border scouts. "That is why the moon chose you." She believed him. Then Amelia came home. It happened in late spring of the 2nd year when the apple trees were opening and the palace smelled of wet blossoms. A ship arrived from the Duchy of Corin with blue sails and a passenger every servant knew by name before Ella had even met her. Amelia Black was Kane's distant cousin, though everyone called her cousin as if the blood were closer. Her parents had died when she was small. She had lived in the palace for 5 years as a child, half ward, half little sister, running after Kane through the old corridors. At 13, a Corin noblewoman adopted her and took her overseas. 10 years passed, letters stopped, memories sweetened. Kane went to the harbor himself. Ella watched from the 2nd-floor window with a cup of tea cooling between her hands. She saw the ship plank lower. She saw a woman in dark traveling clothes step onto the quay. Kane moved before anyone else did. He caught Amelia in his arms, lifted her off her feet, and held her while she laughed against his shoulder. The embrace lasted a little too long. Ella told herself that was shameful to notice. Amelia had been family. Amelia had been gone for 10 years. A good man would welcome her. A kind wife would smile. So Ella smiled when Kane brought Amelia into the palace. "This is Ella," Kane said. "My Luna." Amelia's eyes swept from Ella's crown to her throat, then softened into sweetness. "I have heard so much about you," she said. "Kane was always stubborn. I am glad the moon found someone patient." The words sounded warm. The pause before patient did not. Ella offered her a room in the eastern guest wing. Amelia clasped her hands. "How generous. But Kane promised I could stay near the old library. I used to sleep there when storms frightened me. Do you remember, brother?" Kane smiled. "I remember." Amelia was given the chamber beside his study. On the third afternoon, she carried almond pastries to Kane's desk. "You loved these as a boy," she said from the doorway, "unless kings become too grand for old tastes." Kane laughed and waved her in. On the fourth afternoon, Ella brought honey cakes. Amelia's plate already sat near the ledgers, half empty. Kane had powdered sugar on his thumb. "Leave them there," he said through a mouthful. "I will eat them later." He did not. On the seventh afternoon, Amelia came with tea and a story about court masks. Kane forgot a border petition waiting under his elbow. Ella stood in the outer room with the chancellor and listened to his laughter through the door. On the 12th afternoon, Amelia began calling him brother in front of others. The word was soft. It excused everything. It let her touch his sleeve, lean near his chair, steal grapes from his plate, and laugh when he scolded her. "She is lonely," Kane told Ella that night. They lay in their chamber with the hearth low. His arm rested across Ella's waist, but his body had already turned away. "I know," Ella said. "I am trying to make her welcome." "Then why do you look wounded every time she enters a room?" Ella turned her face toward him. "Do I?" "You do." The answer came too quickly. She touched the mark on the back of her neck. It felt cooler than usual. "Kane," she said, "what is Amelia to you now?" He opened his eyes. Irritation moved across his face before he covered it. "She is my cousin." "Only that?" "Only that?" He sat up on one elbow. "Ella, she grew up with me. Her parents died. She was a frightened child in this palace. Must I account for every kindness?" "No," Ella answered. "Then stop making me feel cruel for being decent." The words landed quietly. They stayed. Ella turned onto her side. Kane sighed behind her, then lay down without touching her again. The mark at her neck cooled until sleep felt far away. After that, Amelia rarely attacked from the front. She had better tools. She praised Ella's gowns before ladies whose own dresses came from royal tailors. "It is charming how you still favor simple cuts," she said. "Some women lose themselves when raised too fast." She asked Ella to explain council matters in front of ministers, then tilted her head when Ella answered. "How brave. I never understood politics either." She spilled wine on Ella's sleeve at supper, then cried when Ella changed her gown instead of accepting the apology twice. "I think she dislikes me," Amelia told Kane, trembling over her untouched soup. Kane looked at Ella across the table. Not accusing yet. Measuring. That felt worse. The first true humiliation came in the rose garden. Ella crossed the path after a meeting with the steward and heard Amelia cry out. The sound cut through the warm afternoon. Kane reached her first. Amelia sat on a stone bench, one slipper off, her ankle pale in his hands. She leaned back on both palms with tears bright in her eyes. "I twisted it," she said. "I am so foolish." Kane knelt in the grass. He touched her ankle with a gentleness Ella knew too well. "Does this hurt?" "Only when you stop." He smiled despite himself. Ella stood behind the roses. A thorn pierced her finger. Blood welled, round and dark. She did not move. Kane bent his head and blew lightly over Amelia's skin as if cooling a burn. Amelia watched him under her lashes. When he lifted her into his arms, she looped both arms around his neck. Her mouth curved against his shoulder. Ella saw it. That night, Kane did not come to bed. Amelia's ankle ached. She could not sleep. Kane meant only to sit with her. Then the rain started. Hours grew late. Then the king slept over his desk while his mate lay alone under a cold canopy. At dawn, Ella found him in the study. Amelia was curled on the couch under his cloak. Kane woke as Ella entered. His face tightened with guilt, then hardened against it. "Nothing happened," he said. Ella looked at the cloak around Amelia's shoulders. "I did not ask." "Your face did." Amelia stirred and opened her eyes. "Ella, please do not be angry. I was in such pain. Kane was only kind." Kane rose at once. "Go back to sleep." The tenderness in his voice was a door closing. Ella left before either of them could see her hand shake. In the mirror that morning, the golden mark on her neck had faded to the color of old brass. The palace noticed before Kane did. Servants lowered their voices when she passed. Lords who had once bowed from the waist now dipped their heads only halfway. Ladies began inviting Amelia to embroidery circles meant for the Luna. Amelia always declined sweetly, then appeared anyway because Kane had asked her to keep Ella company. Company became witness. Witness became pressure. Pressure became evidence. The emerald brooch disappeared in the 4th month. It had belonged to Kane's mother, Queen Mara, who died before Ella came to court. The brooch was shaped like a crescent leaf and locked in a hidden drawer inside Kane's study. Only Kane knew the drawer. Only Ella knew where he kept the small brass key, because he had once trusted her enough to ask for it while both his hands were ink-stained. At breakfast, Amelia lifted her eyes from her pear and said, "I hope the servants find it soon. Poor Kane has so few things from his mother." Kane frowned. "How did you know it was missing?" Amelia's cheeks colored. "I heard the steward mention a search. I did not mean to intrude." Then she turned to Ella with careful worry. "You were in the study for a long time 2 days ago. Did you see anything?" The table quieted. Ella set down her knife. "Kane asked me to check the northern map." Kane's gaze flicked to her. "I did." It should have ended there. The answer did not. 3 days later, Amelia's maid screamed from Ella's dressing room. The palace came running. Inside the bottom drawer, the emerald brooch lay beneath folded linen, wrapped in one of Ella's handkerchiefs. The handkerchief had her initials in blue thread. She had stitched them herself as a girl. By sunset, Ella stood in the great hall again. There were fewer people than at a feast, but enough for damage. Ministers, guards, 2 ladies who had no reason to be there except curiosity. Amelia stood beside Kane's chair, red-eyed and helpless. The brooch rested on a velvet tray between them. "It was not in my room," Ella said. Kane descended the steps. Each step seemed to cost him something. That should have mattered. Nothing in her did. "It was found in your drawer." "Placed there." "By whom?" Ella looked at Amelia. Amelia's lips parted. "Ella." The hurt in her voice was perfect. Kane's face went hard. "Do not accuse her because you are cornered." A year earlier, he would have asked who touched the drawer. He would have checked keys, servants, schedules, dust on the hidden lock. He would have pulled the truth apart thread by thread because he knew Ella never took what was not hers. Now he looked tired of being asked to believe her. "Kane," Ella said, "do you trust me?" He stood so close that she could smell wine from the feast planning he had abandoned. He gave no answer. That silence was the sentence. Still, he spoke it aloud. "There is witness and object both. How can I trust you against that?" The mark at Ella's neck dimmed all the way down. She felt it happen. A soft inner light went out, leaving the skin cold. The bond did not break. Wolves said a fated mark could not die while both mates breathed. Wolves lied about many things because truth frightened them. Kane turned away. Amelia moved after him and caught his arm. "Do not be too angry. She must have had a reason." Ella saw his hand remain where Amelia placed it. That was the night Ella sewed coins into her hem. She did not plan to leave. Not that night. Hope is stubborn when it has lived in a palace bed. It keeps saying one more talk, one more proof, one more memory strong enough to pull a man back from his own vanity. So she stayed. She watched Kane take the key from its old place and wear it around his neck. In council, her seat moved farther from his chair. She watched Amelia learn the rhythm of his work, his meals, his temper, and his pride. Pride was the easiest door. Kane did not want to be a man fooled by a woman. He did not want to admit he enjoyed being needed by someone who never challenged him. He did not want to face that Ella had become useful in ways that made him less grand. She asked hard questions in council now. Supply routes became arguments she could win. Hidden theft surfaced in tax ledgers under her eye. Ministers learned to answer plainly. Amelia never did that. Amelia listened with shining eyes. "You carry so much alone," she told him. Kane believed her because it made him noble. Amelia's motive was not as simple as love. Love would have made her reckless. Amelia was never reckless. She had returned from Corin with debts hidden under silk, letters from creditors in a locked case, and a promise to a foreign patron who wanted influence over Kane's court. A second Luna seat would not give her the throne, but it would give her rooms, seals, money, and access. She also wanted what childhood had taught her to want. When she had been small and orphaned, servants had praised Kane for protecting her. Lords had called her the little shadow of the prince. Then she had been sent away. The palace forgot her. Kane became king. A tailor's daughter received the crown Amelia had spent childhood imagining near her own hair. Need and resentment grew together. By the time she stepped off the ship, she did not know where one ended. She studied the palace in a week. Frightened maids revealed themselves first. One gambling guard became useful by accident. A sour minister showed which questions cut deepest. Every person gave her a possible lever. The brooch was not stolen because Amelia loved jewels. It was planted because trust, once cracked in public, bleeds everywhere. By the 6th month, the spring banquet arrived. Ella had spent 3 days approving seating, kitchens, music, and guest lists. Kane barely thanked her. Amelia chose flowers and received compliments for the beauty of the hall. That evening, Ella wore the silver-gray gown Kane had ordered during their first winter. She pinned her hair high to hide the lifeless mark. She placed the Luna crown on her head because duty, like grief, can become a habit. At supper, Kane sat beside Amelia. He poured her wine. With his own hands, he peeled shrimp for her. His thumb wiped sauce from her lower lip. The great hall watched. Ella sat before an untouched plate. A young baroness near the pillar whispered, "She must have done something terrible." Another said, "Or she did not know how to keep him." Ella closed her hand around her cup until the stem pressed a red line into her palm. Then Amelia rose. She walked into the center of the hall, violet skirt fanning around her like spilled dusk. "Brother," she said, lifting her glass, "I owe this court honesty." Kane's expression shifted. He had not expected this. Not exactly. But Amelia knew the stage once she owned it. "I came home with no claim. I asked for nothing except a corner of the place where I was once safe. Yet kindness grows into something deeper when hearts remember each other." The nobles leaned in. Ella felt the room tilt. Amelia turned toward Kane. Tears brightened her eyes but did not fall. "If I am wrong, send me away. If I am shameful, I will bear it. But if your heart has room for me, Give me a name before all these people." Kane stood too quickly. There the truth stood. The moment a decent man could still stop, he could say grief had confused her, or he could say she was family. He could protect his wife and his cousin both by refusing spectacle. Instead, pride chose for him. He came down to stand beside Amelia. Ella watched his hand hover, then settle at Amelia's back. "The kingdom needs harmony," Kane said. A minister's eyes widened. He knew then. Some of them had known. "Ella has served as Luna," Kane continued. "But the crown belongs to the strength of the house, not one woman's pride. Amelia will share the burden. From tonight onward, she will be my second Luna." Amelia lowered her head as if overwhelmed. Then Kane looked at Ella. "The crown passes to her." That was how forever ended. Not with thunder. With a man too proud to admit he had been guided into cruelty. Ella walked until the palace bells faded behind hills. At first anger carried her. It filled her chest with heat and kept her spine straight. She crossed village roads with rain in her hair and mud climbing her gown. When the shoes failed, she tore strips from the inner lining of her skirt and wrapped her feet. By the second night, anger became pain. The road north had no mercy for court silk. Stones cut the soles, brambles caught the hem. Cold settled inside the wet fabric and stayed there. Ella slept under a broken cart beside a shepherd's field and woke to crows picking at frost near her elbow. She checked her neck each dawn. The mark remained, gray and flat. A true mate bond was supposed to pull one wolf toward the other in danger. Songs claimed it could guide a king through blizzards to his Luna's side. Songs were written by people who preferred longing to truth. Kane did not come. On the third day, a farmer's wife gave Ella stale bread after seeing blood on her stockings. She did not ask questions. She only said, "Roads are full of men who ask too much. Keep to the ditches after sunset." Ella thanked her and kept to the ditches. On the fourth day, she sold 1 silver hairpin for a wool shawl and a heel of cheese. The fifth day turned rain into sleet. The sixth brought her to a crossroads shrine where the king's proclamation hung nailed to the post. It announced that Lady Amelia Black had been elevated to Royal Luna by King Kane Alpha in recognition of noble blood, long loyalty, and the needs of the realm. Ella read the line twice. Long loyalty. She laughed once, and the sound came out empty. Below the proclamation, someone had scratched another sentence with a knife. What happened to the first one? Ella pulled her hood low and moved on. On the 7th evening, she saw Orlin. The northern border city rose from a ring of dark pines and stone walls. Smoke poured from chimneys. Watchfires burned along the parapets. Beyond the city, the mountains stood white and sharp against a bruised sky. Orlin did not look beautiful. It looked like a place built to survive. That suited her. Ella entered through the south gate with a trader's wagon. The guard looked at her torn gown, her muddy shawl, and the dried blood at her ankles. His nose twitched. He smelled wolf, grief, and old royal perfume. Name? Ella Vale. He did not recognize it, or he chose not to. Trade? Tailor. That answer steadied her more than Luna ever had. The guard jerked his chin toward the lower streets. Needles earn bread here. Soldiers ruin cloth faster than wives can mend it. She found a room under the roof of a dye-maker's house. The ceiling slanted so low that she struck her head twice the first night. One window stuck. Cedar and old smoke clung to the mattress. Every stair groaned as if it resented being used. It was hers. She used her last coins to buy needles, black thread, linen scraps, and a wooden sign. Mending, hems, military patches, fair price. The sign hung crooked outside the dye-maker's alley. Her first customer brought a torn sleeve and 3 copper coins. A second brought a child's coat with both elbows gone. Then came a soldier who laughed when he saw her hands. "Those little fingers can fix a wolf-hide vest?" Ella took the vest, examined the ripped shoulder, and said, "Not if you keep talking over the stitch." The soldier blinked. Then he laughed louder and paid in advance. Word moved through Orland the way wind moved through pine. The Southern woman sewed fast. That Southern woman did not cheat. Even a saber cut could lie flat in cloth after her needle passed. By the third week, men from 2 barracks crowded the alley before dawn. Ella worked until her back burned. She ate bread beside the window. At night, thread sometimes stayed looped around one finger. Soon the city noises became familiar. Axes before sunrise, carts over frozen ruts, drunk soldiers singing old battle songs, wolves shifting in alleys after moonrise, shaking snow from their fur before returning to human skin. No one called her Luna. Some days that hurt. Most days it freed her. In the palace, every glance had weighed her worth against the crown. In Orland, a crooked seam was crooked, no matter who wore it. A good stitch held no matter who mocked it. Work made sense. The old mark faded by slow degrees. It did not vanish. It thinned, as if Kane were being washed from her blood one cold morning at a time. A retired northern officer named Bram came in near the end of the first month. He had a square gray beard, a limp, and a habit of judging cloth by pulling it hard enough to insult the maker. He brought a torn battle flag. Not a city flag, not a merchant banner. A military standard. Black wool, silver border, gray wolf head. The fabric had been slashed across the center and burned along one edge. Ella laid it on her table with care. Bram watched her face. "You know that crest?" "Gray family," she said. "Northern border lords. Enemies of the Alpha throne, if Southern mouths tell it." "Southern mouths tell many things." The old man's eyes narrowed with interest. Ella touched the burned edge. "This needs backing cloth, not a surface mend. If you hang it in wind after a simple patch, it will rip again." "How long?" 2 nights. Most would say a week. Most talk while they work. Bram laughed through his nose. He returned after 2 nights and found the flag spread across the table. The burned edge had been reinforced from behind. Dark thread rebuilt the wolf's muzzle where flame had eaten the shape. If one looked closely, the old slash remained visible, but the flag could fly again. Bram ran a thumb along the seam. "You ever sew for an army?" "No," Kane said. "Want to?" Ella looked up. He lowered his voice. "Gray's Northern Legion needs hands. Flags, coats, harness straps, tent seams. It is cold work. Men are rude. Pay is honest. Food is regular." The name moved through the room like a draft. Lord, the name was Victor Gray. Every child in Kane's kingdom knew some version of him. In royal stories, he was a border wolf with iron manners and rebel blood. Soldiers' songs made him the red-haired lord who held mountain passes against impossible odds. Council papers called him a problem no treaty had solved. Kane had cursed him often. "Gray keeps the North proud because pride is cheaper than taxes," he once said. Ella had never met Victor. She had seen his name under maps, casualty lists, winter grain requests, and warnings from ministers who disliked any lord too useful to remove. Bram waited. Ella thought of the palace. She thought of Kane's hand on Amelia's back. She thought of the crown on marble. "I will go," she said. The northern camp sat beyond Orland, where the road bent toward the White Plains. It was less a camp than a moving town of canvas, timber, smoke, horses, and wolves. Soldiers hauled barrels. Blacksmiths hammered iron. Cooks cursed over huge pots. Patrols came in with snow on their brows and blood on their sleeves. No one softened the place for her. Bram led her to the sewing tent and pointed at a mountain of damaged cloth. "Start there." She finished anyway. The tent had gaps where wind cut through. Her breath smoked above the table. Needles chilled until they bit her fingertips. She wrapped rags around her hands between tasks and warmed them over a brazier that smoked more than it heated. Men entered, dropped torn gear, and left. Some thanked her. Others grunted. A few stared at the faint mark on her neck when her hair slipped forward. On the 7th evening, the tent flap lifted. The wind stopped. That was the first thing Ella noticed. Not the man. The absence of cold. Someone tall stood in the entrance, blocking the gale with his shoulders. She looked up from a torn saddle blanket. Victor Gray ducked into the tent. He was not polished like Kane. He wore a dark leather coat with snow melting on the seams. His red hair had been cut short without vanity. A scar crossed one brow and vanished near his temple. His eyes were gray, not silver, not poetic, just the hard gray of winter stones. He looked at the stacks of mended coats, then at the flag drying near the brazier. Then his eyes went to Ella. "You are the Southern tailor," he said. His voice was low and rough from cold air. Ella stood with care. "I am." Her hair shifted, exposing the back of her neck. Victor's gaze moved there. He did not stare long. 2 seconds at most. Enough. "That is Kane Alpha's mark." The tent became too quiet. Ella held Kane's gaze. "It was." "Was?" "He asked me to give my crown to another woman. I gave it back and left him with the rest." A coal cracked in the brazier. Victor took off one glove and picked up the repaired gray flag. He turned the edge in his hand. His fingers were broad, scarred, and careful. "This stitch will hold in sleet," he said. "It should." "You reinforced the wolf's mouth." It was burned thin. Most would have hidden the damage with silver thread. Pretty thread does not hold a battlefield together. Victor looked at her then. For the first time, something like approval crossed his face. "Kane is blind," he said. Ella was not ready for that. Her laugh escaped before she could stop it. Small, rusted, almost painful. Victor set the flag down exactly where he had found it. "And stupid," he added. This time the laugh hurt less. He did not smile. "I need more than a tailor. My quartermaster broke his leg, and his deputy counts sacks like a drunk priest counts sins. Bram says you read ledgers." "Bram talks too much." "He does. Is he wrong?" "No," Victor said. Victor reached into his coat and placed a leather-bound supply book on her table. "Check that. If you find the error before morning, you can stay as a clerk. If you find why the error matters, you can stay as an officer of stores." Ella opened the book. Rows of grain, salt, arrows, lamp oil, horse oats, winter boots, dried beans, and bandage cloth marched down the pages. The handwriting changed in places. Numbers had been corrected. A shipment from East Watch appeared twice with 2 different weights. Victor watched her see it. "You already know," he said. "Maybe." "Say it." She traced the entries. "The missing grain is not missing. It was counted under wet weight at East Watch and dry weight here, but the boots are wrong." Victor's brows lifted slightly. Ella turned 3 pages back. "You ordered 300 pairs, received 300, issued 240. The ledger says 60 remain, but the repair lists show 87 men with split soles last week. That means the boots were badly made, stolen, or deliberately marked received without inspection. If the next patrol marches north with old soles, you lose feet before you lose men." Victor said nothing for a long moment. Then he took the supply book and closed it. "Officer of stores," he said. "That was quick." "So were you." He turned toward the tent flap, then paused. "You will have trouble. Some men dislike taking orders from women. Others dislike Southerners. The rest dislike anyone who can count better than they can. Bring problems to Bram if they are small. Bring them to me if they are not." "And if the problem is you?" Victor looked back. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "Then bring a witness." He left. the wind rushed in after him. Ella sat down slowly. For the first time since the palace doors closed behind her, she felt something other than loss sharpen inside her. Use. Not being used. Being useful. There was a difference large enough to live inside. The next months remade her by force. She woke before dawn to count flour barrels stiff with frost. She argued with teamsters over missing harness rings. Western wind taught her which roads vanished under snow. Smoked fish lasted longer than salted pork in damp wagons. Soldiers lied about torn coats because they hated sewing cues, and captains lied about arrow stock because they hated admitting waste. Eventually, she learned to shout. The first time she raised her voice across the yard, 20 men turned. A wagon master named Hollis had tried to move lamp oil without listing it. "Put it back," Ella called. He grinned. "This is military business." "Then it needs military records." "Put it back." "Little Southern Needle wants to command wagons now?" The yard went still. Ella walked to him through churned snow. Her boots were old, but the soles held. "If that oil reaches West Ridge without a seal, the captain there will claim he never received it. When the next storm closes the pass, men will sit in dark tents and burn rope for light. If a lamp falls, canvas catches. If canvas catches, wolves die coughing. So put it back or explain to Lord Grey why you gambled with 30 lives because writing your name bored you." Hollis stared. Bram snorted from a barrel stack. The oil went back. By supper, every cook in camp knew the story. By morning, men started bringing her records before she asked. Victor did not praise her in public. He did something more useful. He obeyed her systems. When she required seals on outgoing carts, his seal appeared first. After she changed the ration tables, he ate the same oat bread as the scouts. A captain complained that supply inspections delayed patrol, so Victor asked him how fast he could march barefoot. The complaint died. Once, a landslide blocked 3 grain wagons in a mountain cut. Ella rode out with Bram, found the road buried, and calculated they had 2 days before the forward camp ran short. She was standing in sleet, furious at a map, when Victor arrived with 20 men carrying picks. "I sent for laborers," she said. "You sent through the East Road," he answered. "It is flooded." "Then why are you here?" He lifted a pick from one soldier and struck the first stone himself. "Because my army eats what you move." No speech, no grand command. He worked until his gloves tore. Ella watched him shoulder stone beside men who would have followed him into fire. Kane had liked appearing strong. Victor seemed uninterested in appearance. He only did the thing required and expected others to do the same. That difference reached places in her she had sealed shut. Another time, a young horse threw her during training. She landed in mud so hard the sky cracked white above her. Before she could sit up, Victor crossed the ring. He crouched, checked her wrist, her shoulder, her ribs. Bone? Never. Pride. Pride heals slower. He helped her stand and let go as soon as she was steady. The next morning, a gray mare waited outside her tent. The mare had calm eyes, broad hooves, and a ridiculous little braid tied into her mane with black cord. Bram found Ella staring. "Lord Grey says she is too lazy to murder you." Ella touched the braid. "Did he do this?" Bram's face became a wall of false innocence. Northern warlords are known for mane decoration. Terrifying habit. Ella smiled for the rest of the morning and told no one why. The old bond mark kept fading. It never glowed again for Kane. Sometimes, during hard weather, it ached like an old break. When messengers came from the south and carried news of court, it prickled. When a merchant mentioned Amelia's new gowns, it went numb. But pain no longer commanded her. She had work. There was a room in the officers' row, small but dry. Ledgers stood stacked in order, boots fit her feet, a knife hung from her belt, and her mare refused streams wider than a table unless bribed with apple peel. Men grumbled when she denied requests, then came back to ask properly. Bram called her girl only when worried. Victor appeared at strange moments with practical answers. Never flowers. Never poetry. Once, he left a whetstone beside her dull belt knife. Another time, a second brazier appeared in the records tent after she worked there past midnight and coughed from cold. When she forgot supper 3 nights in a row, the cook started sending covered bowls without explanation. The bowls always contained the part of stew with more meat. Ella did not ask. Victor did not tell. This restraint felt safer than charm. Still, the camp saw more than they said. One evening, Ella argued with a scout captain over wolf salve. He wanted 6 jars for 1 patrol. She said 2. "We are going beyond Black Fen," he said. "The ice cuts paws. You return in 4 days. 2 jars cover that. The Western Patrol is out 9. They get 6. Lord Grey would approve my request. Then ask him." The captain turned and nearly collided with Victor, who had been standing behind him long enough to hear everything. "My lord," the captain said quickly. Victor looked at the requisition slate. Officer Vale said 2. "Black Fen ice is sharp. Then step carefully." The captain left with 2 jars. Ella waited until he was gone. "You could have let me finish." "You were finished," he was repeating himself. "That is not the point." Victor studied her face. "What is the point? If men think your shadow stands behind every order I give, they obey you, not me." A lesser alpha would have bristled. Victor nodded once. "Fair." The next day he issued a camp order stating that quartermaster decisions carried command weight unless appealed in writing. Appeals required evidence, not volume. He did not mention Ella. Victor did not need to move. Respect in the northern camp did not arrive as applause. It arrived when men stopped testing every latch. In winter, the army shifted farther north toward the frost line. The new camp had to be built near water, wood, and a ridge high enough for watchfires. Ella spent 3 nights mapping supply lines by candlelight, rubbing her temples as numbers blurred. Near midnight, she found a problem. The proposed camp had wood but no reliable water. Snowmelt was too uncertain. Hauling barrels over frozen ground would cost horses and time. She leaned over the map until wax dripped onto the corner. From outside the tent, Victor said, 3 miles east, there is an underground stream under the black pines. Ella jerked upright. The tent flap moved. He stood outside, not entering, a lantern in one hand. "How long have you been there?" she asked. "Long enough to see you threaten the map." "Why did you not come in?" "You were thinking." She pushed back from the table and stepped into the cold. The night was clear. Stars burned above the camp in hard white clusters. Snow creaked under her boots. Victor leaned against a post, red hair dark in the lantern glow, shoulders dusted with frost. "Show me tomorrow," she said. "I planned to." "You planned?" "You would not trust a stream you had not seen." That much was true. It touched her that he knew. For a while they stood in the wind without speaking. The camp slept around them. Somewhere a wolf barked once in its dream. Ella pulled his fur-lined vest tighter around her shoulders. He had thrown it at her 3 days earlier after finding her sleeves iced at the cuffs. "Victor," she said. "Yes," he said. "The first night you came to the sewing tent, you already knew who I was." "Yes," Victor said. "Because of the mark?" "I saw Kane's matching one years ago at a parley. Yours had the same curve, faded, but same." The old mark prickled under her hair. "Then why keep me? You and Kane have hated each other since before I learned to hold a needle. You could have thought I was a spy." Victor looked out toward the dark pines. "Spies avoid honest cold. That cannot be your whole reason." "No," Amelia said. He was quiet long enough that she thought he would say nothing else. Then he turned the lantern lower. I saw you in the snow the day after Bram brought you. You were kneeling outside the tent because the light was better there. Your fingers were split. You kept warming the needle over your breath because metal stuck to your skin. The flag you repaired that day held through a ridge storm the next week. Ella swallowed. Victor faced her fully. A person who works like that when no one important is watching is not usually a traitor. Her throat tightened. Praise from Kane had been warm and easy. Praise from Victor came like a stone placed in her palm. Plain, weighty, real. And if I had been a traitor? Then I would have caught you. She almost smiled, confident. Experienced. The wind pushed loose hair across her cheek. Victor lifted his hand, stopped before touching her, then let it fall. That restraint again. It made the air between them sharper. Kane did not know what he had, Victor said. Ella looked away. Kane knew, for a while. Then he preferred being worshipped to being known. Victor considered that. That sounds like him. You truly hate him. I hate waste. He wastes men, trust, and chances. The hatred follows naturally. She let out a breath that turned white. Victor stepped closer, slow enough that she could step back. She did not. I want you in the north, he said. No decoration, not a borrowed family word, no courtly veil over it. Ella's heart struck once, hard. As quartermaster? As that? As more, if you choose. The old mark at her neck pulsed, not with life, but with memory. A warning from a dead thing. Victor saw her flinch. I will not push against a wound another man left, he said. Your old mark is not gone. When it fades, if you still want a new one, tell me. If you never want one, I will still keep your office and your pay. She looked at him then. The moon made his gray eyes pale. He seemed carved from cold and patience. You make it sound simple. It should be. It never is. Then we make it honest, at least. Something broke in her, but not like the night of the crown. This break opened into breath. Ella reached behind her head and loosened the pins from her hair. Black strands fell over her shoulders. The back of her neck met the cold night. Victor went very still. Ella, Victor murmured. You said when it fades. Yes, Kane said. It is dead. Faded or not, it is dead. She turned enough to show him the old bite in full. In moonlight, it looked like a gray ring pressed into her skin. Kane's shape remained, but no light lived inside it. Cover it, she said. Victor stayed still. Do not answer from pain. I am not. Do not answer because Kane shamed you. Her chin lifted. Kane is not in this. That is the point. Victor's eyes searched her face. Ella stepped closer. I am tired of carrying proof that a man owned a place in me he abandoned. I am tired of people seeing a dead mark before they see me. Now I choose the north. The work I built here is mine by choice, and I choose the man who asks before touching what another man took for granted. The words shook at the end, but they did not fail. Victor raised his hand. His thumb brushed the old mark with such care that her knees almost softened. If I mark you, you are gray by bond and law. Kane cannot call you back without challenging me before every northern pack. Good, she said. If he challenges me, blood follows. He should have thought of blood before cutting the bond in public. Victor's mouth tightened. Approval, anger, something deeper. Last chance, he said. Ella turned her back to him and lifted her hair. I have had enough last chances for men who did not deserve them. Victor bent. His breath warmed the dead mark first. Then his teeth entered the old scar. Pain flashed bright. Ella grabbed his sleeve. Then the pain changed. Heat spread from the bite in a steady ring, iron warm and clean. It did not surge like Kane's first golden mark. No spring fever or royal bells flooded her senses. Instead, it rooted. It moved down her spine, into her ribs, through her hands, and settled low in her body like a fire built to last the night. The old gray scar vanished under a new shape. Victor's bite was deeper, broader, and exact. It covered Kane's mark edge to edge. Silver gray light rose through the wound, quiet and unwavering. Not a blaze, a northern star. Ella exhaled. For the first time in almost a year, the back of her neck felt alive. Victor released her and rested his forehead near her shoulder, breathing hard through restraint. "Done," he said. The word sounded rough. She turned. On his neck, just above his collar, a matching mark opened in answer. Her wolf rose inside her, not submissive, not frantic, but clear. "Mate," it said. Not fate this time. Choice. Victor touched his new mark with 2 fingers, then looked at the silver gray light on his skin. "Well," he said, "Kane will hate that." Ella laughed into his chest before she could stop herself. Victor wrapped his coat around her and held her there. "If he comes to take you," he said against her hair, "I break his hand first. Then we discuss diplomacy." "That is not diplomacy. It is northern diplomacy. You need lessons. You keep accounts. Add it to the list." She laughed again, and this time the sound did not hurt. Above them the camp slept. Beyond the camp the snow plains stretched under moonlight. Behind her lay a palace, a crown, and a man who had mistaken possession for love. Before her stood a cold road, hard work, and a bond she had chosen with open eyes. Ella rested her cheek against Victor's coat. The new mark glowed under his hand. Far to the south, Kane woke from a dream with blood in his mouth. He sat up in the royal bed, choking on air. The chamber was dark except for the hearth. Amelia slept beside him, one arm across the empty space where Ella used to lie during storms. The pain at his neck was unbearable. He stumbled to the mirror and yanked his collar open. The old mark there, Ella's mark, had cracked. Not in skin, in light. The dim amber ring that had lingered for months split down the center and went black at the edges. Kane gripped the washstand until the basin rattled. He knew before any messenger came. Someone had marked her. Another alpha had placed teeth over what should have been his. His wolf slammed against his bones. "Mine." The word rose with such force that he nearly shifted in the chamber. Amelia woke. "Kane?" He did not answer. She sat up, hair loose, face creased with sleep. "What happened?" Kane pressed one hand to the mark. His fingers came away wet with sweat. "Ella," Kane whispered. Amelia went still. Then she softened her voice. "Again? You dreamed of her again?" He looked at her as if he had forgotten she was there. That look frightened her more than anger. "She is gone," Amelia said. "You told everyone she was gone." "She was mine." The words slipped out raw. Amelia's face whitened. "Was?" she said carefully. "Kane, I am here. I wear the crown now." He stared at the moonlit floor. That crown remained. For weeks after Ella left, the silver crown had sat on a cushion in Amelia's chamber. Kane had avoided looking at it. At Amelia's elevation ceremony, one moonstone had seemed duller than the others. He told himself the light was poor. He had also told himself Ella would return. On the first morning after she left, he expected rage to bring her back. By the 3rd day, he expected hunger. By the 7th, he sent a discreet guard to check the roads, not because he feared for her, he told himself, but because a runaway Luna made the court look unstable. The guard found nothing. Kane ordered no public search. Pride forbade it. Amelia encouraged that pride gently. "If you chase her, every lord will say she commands you," she said. "Let her anger cool. She knows where home is." Home. The word had worked on him then. Now it curdled. Kane began seeing Ella in rooms after she left, not visions. Worse, absences. The empty chair in council where she used to sit upright, pretending not to be nervous. An ink knife remained because it fit her smaller hand. Honey cakes vanished until he snapped at the kitchen to continue, then could not eat them. A Northern Supply report waited, one she would have understood before his ministers finished explaining it. Amelia filled the spaces loudly. She ordered musicians for breakfast. Curtains changed under her orders. New seals were requested before she knew their use. Men bowed to her crown, and she smiled, yet petitions about drainage, widows, grain rot, or debts bored her. "That is steward work," she said one afternoon, pushing aside a stack of requests. "Why must a Luna drown in dull paper?" Kane looked at the papers. Ella had drowned in them nightly and never complained unless the ink was cheap. "Because people live inside dull paper," he said. Amelia blinked, wounded. "You sound like her." He hated her for saying it. Then hated himself because she was right. Still, he did not call Ella back. Calling meant admitting she had left by choice. It meant asking forgiveness before witnesses he had taught to doubt her. Worst of all, it meant facing the brooch. The brooch had become a thorn under his thoughts. Once or twice, late at night, he reopened the drawer where it now lay and studied the clasp. A faint scratch near the hinge bothered him. He remembered Ella's hands on metal. She hated forcing clasps. She opened things with patience, not scratches. He asked Amelia's maid one question about the discovery. The girl cried for an hour. Amelia found out by supper. "You question Nessa as if she were a thief," she said. "She has served me faithfully since Corin. She found my mother's brooch. By accident. Conveniently." Amelia's eyes filled. "Do you think I planted it?" Kane did not answer fast enough. She broke like glass. For 2 days she stayed in her chamber. The court blamed Ella's poison lingering in the king's mind. Kane apologized because it was easier than finishing the thought. Now in the dark bedroom, the cracked mark at his neck refused ease. Someone had marked Ella. Kane sent riders north before dawn. He told them to learn where she was, nothing more. He told himself that was all. A week later, one rider returned with mud to his waist and fear in his eyes. "Your Majesty," he said, kneeling, "she is in the north." Kane's hand closed around the arm of his chair. "Where?" "With Lord Victor Grey's legion." The council chamber sharpened. Every minister heard the name like a drawn blade. Kane stood slowly. "As what?" The rider swallowed. "Quartermaster, officer." A few lords exchanged looks. Kane's voice lowered. "And the mark?" The rider stared at the floor. "Speak." "Grey's mark, Your Majesty, on her neck, fresh, a full bond." The chair behind Kane toppled. No one moved. His wolf rose so violently that claws split from his fingers. He forced them back with effort that left sweat on his brow. Victor Grey. His rival, his border enemy. The man who had rejected 3 royal tax settlements, broken 2 southern raids, and sent back Kane's diplomats with polite insults folded into treaties. Victor had marked Ella. Kane imagined red hair bending over her neck, teeth covering his old scar, Ella allowing it, Ella choosing it. The pain turned bright enough to blind. "Summon the Border Council," Kane said. His chancellor bowed. "For war, Your Majesty?" Kane looked toward the north windows. Snow clouds gathered there, dark beyond the glass. "For a treaty dinner," he said. The chancellor hesitated. Kane's smile had no warmth. If Grey wants to display what is mine, he can do it before every neutral lord. No one corrected him. Not while hope still lied. The neutral city of Marrowbridge stood between south and north on an island of stone. 3 bridges tied it to 3 roads. One road led to Kane's royal lands, green and rich. One led to Victor's pine country, hard and cold. The third led west through merchant valleys where gold mattered more than banners. For 200 years, kings and border lords had met there when they wanted peace without trust. The treaty dinner was announced as a celebration of renewed patrol agreements. No one believed that. Invitations spread through noble houses like sparks through dry straw. By the week of the feast, every guest knew Kane Alpha would attend with Amelia, and Victor Grey would attend with the former Luna. They did not say former where Kane's envoys could hear. They said it everywhere else. Ella received the invitation in the records tent. Bram read it over her shoulder and whistled. Marrowbridge. Fancy floors. Bad wine. Too many knives hidden under velvet. Ella kept reading. Kane requested full ceremonial attendance. Of course he did. Man wants witnesses. Victor sat across the table, sharpening a short blade with slow strokes. He had already read the letter once. His face had revealed nothing. Ella folded the parchment. He wants to see the mark, she said. Victor tested the blade edge with his thumb. He wants to see whether you flinch. I will not. I know, Ella said. That answer steadied her more than any compliment. Bram looked between them. You can refuse. No, Ella said. Victor's eyes lifted. She touched the silver-gray mark at her neck. It had settled into her skin over the past 2 months. The first tenderness had faded. The warmth remained, especially when Victor stood near. Sometimes, when she woke before dawn, she felt his steady presence through it before she opened her eyes. Not a chain. A signal fire. If I hide, she said, Kane writes the story. He will say I was stolen, confused, shamed, or punished. I am tired of men narrating my life in rooms where I am absent. Victor sheathed the blade. Then we go. Amelia prepared for Marrowbridge as if preparing for coronation. She emptied jewel cases across her bed and made maids hold gowns in candlelight until their arms shook. Emerald reminded Kane of his mother, so she rejected it. Red belonged too closely to Victor's hair, and she would not give anyone the satisfaction. Silver violet softened her skin and matched the crown. The crown sat on its stand near the mirror. 9 moonstones. 1 faint chip in the 3rd stone, nearly invisible unless light struck from the side. Amelia noticed everything. She noticed that chip daily. It had happened weeks earlier when Kane, drunk and silent, took the crown from her dressing table and held it too tightly. She had asked what he was doing. He had said nothing. When she tried to take it back, 1 moonstone struck the table edge. The sound made him flinch. He apologized to the crown before he apologized to her. Amelia remembered that. She remembered many things now. Kane had asked the cook why honey cakes had changed. He had paused outside the old Luna's chamber before walking on. One night, he said Ella's name in his sleep and reached for someone who was not in the bed. This was not how victory was supposed to feel. In Corin, her patron had promised that desire could be managed if one controlled access. Men love who soothes their vanity, Lady Marcel had told her. Make yourself necessary to his pride, and the rest follows. For a while it had. Kane had liked being Amelia's rescuer. He liked her softness because softness asked nothing but protection. Ella had become questions, ledgers, public competence, and private hurt. Amelia had slipped between them where fatigue had already opened space. But she had misjudged one thing. Kane liked worship. He loved memory. Ella had become memory the moment she walked out. Absence made her pure in ways presence never had. It removed her sharp questions, her tired silences, and the hurt in her eyes. It left only the girl in spring light, the ink-stained hand, the golden mark. Amelia could not compete with a ghost because ghosts never needed patience. So Marrowbridge mattered. Amelia had to make Ella small again while living eyes watched. She had to prove the crown sat where it belonged. She had to remind Kane that the woman beside him was flesh, not regret. "Higher," she told the maid pinning her hair. "My lady? The crown should catch candlelight before anyone sees my face." The maid adjusted the pins. Amelia smiled at her reflection until it looked natural. Kane wore black and gold to the dinner. He looked thinner than Ella remembered when she saw him across the Marrowbridge Hall. His cheekbones had sharpened. Shadows lay under his eyes. The royal mark at his neck was hidden beneath a high collar, but his hand kept rising toward it as if drawn by pain. Amelia sat beside him in silver-violet silk. On her head rested the crown. Ella saw it from the entrance. For one breath, the hall vanished. She was back on marble, hearing moonstones ring at her feet. Victor's hand settled at the small of her back. Not gripping. Present. "Breathe," he said near her ear. She did. The hall returned. Marrowbridge had no throne by design. 3 long tables formed a horseshoe around a central floor. Banners from neutral houses hung between iron chandeliers. Guards from each realm stood at equal distance, their hands visible, their blades peace tied with blue cord. Every head turned as Victor and Ella entered. She wore deep blue wool and silk, northern cut, fitted for movement rather than display. No crown remained, no veil over her neck. Her hair was pinned up with plain silver combs, leaving Victor's mark clear below the curve of her skull. Silver-gray light lived in it. Not bright enough to boast. Bright enough to be undeniable. Kane saw it. The goblet in his hand tilted. Red wine spilled across the white cloth and dripped from the table edge. Amelia reached for his sleeve. He pulled away without looking. That small rejection traveled faster than any shouted insult. Ella took her seat beside Victor. The first course was carried in. Trout with lemon, dark bread, winter greens. No one tasted much. Conversation moved in broken pieces, all of it orbiting the mark on Ella's neck and the crown on Amelia's head. Kane stared until even neutral lords looked away for him. Victor leaned toward Ella. "He looks ill." "Do not start." "I have not started. You will know." Despite herself, her mouth curved. Across the hall, Kane saw that too. His fingers crushed the stem of his goblet. Glass cracked. Wine and blood mixed over his knuckles. Amelia whispered, "Kane." He blinked, as if waking. "Your hand," she said. He looked at the blood. After that, he looked at Ella. Ella was speaking to a Western merchant lord about winter roots. She had not noticed the broken glass. Or she had, and it no longer mattered. The silence was worse. Amelia rose before the second course ended. Her plan had required waiting until dessert, when wine softened the room. Fear moved her sooner. She took her cup and crossed the central floor, graceful as a blade in silk. Victor watched her come. Ella did not turn until Amelia stopped before their table. "Ella," Amelia said warmly, "it has been so long." She did not say sister. She had learned that word no longer helped. Amelia. The lack of title stung. Amelia's smile held. "The North has changed you. You look strong. A little tired, maybe, but strong." Work does that. A few northern officers hid smiles in their cups. Amelia touched the crown lightly. "I wanted to tell you that I care for it well. Kane thought it should remain in the family." Ella's gaze moved to the moonstones. One was chipped. Amelia saw her see it. Heat rose under her painted cheeks. "It suits you," Ella said. "You think so?" "It suits what you did for it." The words were quiet. The nearest tables heard them anyway. Amelia's fingers tightened around her cup. "I hoped you had found peace. Truly. I never wished to take anything that was not freely given." Ella set down her fork. Then you should have refused it. The hall went still. Kane rose halfway from his chair. Victor's hand moved to his knife, then stopped because Ella had not moved. Amelia's eyes shone. You left the crown on the floor. After he asked me to hand it to you in public. I did not know he would do that. Ella studied her face. Amelia had spent years learning how to look wounded. It had served her well because most people felt cruel, doubting tears. But Ella had lived 6 months under those tears. She knew their timing. You knew enough, Ella said. Amelia's breath caught. Kane stepped away from his chair. Enough. Ella did not look at him. Amelia turned toward the room as if appealing to decency. I came only to be kind. She still hates me. Victor spoke for the first time. No, Kane answered. She answered you. Those are different things. Amelia's gaze snapped to him. Victor's gray eyes were flat. You have Kane. The crown is on your head. The title you wanted is yours. Why cross the floor unless you needed her pain too? The question landed with ugly precision. Amelia went pale. Kane's face darkened. Gray, watch your mouth. Victor leaned back, calm. Watch your Luna. A harsh silence followed. Which Luna, the room seemed to ask. Amelia retreated first. She dipped her head, as if dignity required it, and returned to Kane. But her hand shook when she lifted her cup. Ella exhaled slowly. Victor did not touch her this time. He only said, Good answer. Yours was less diplomatic. I warned you about northern diplomacy. The third course came. Roast venison, spiced roots, bowls of stewed apples. The dinner tried to continue, but the room had crossed into waiting. Everyone sensed another break coming. Kane barely sat. His neck burned. Each time Ella turned her head, Victor's mark caught light. It seemed to speak across the room. Chosen. Covered. Gone. Kane remembered biting her the first time. Her hand had clutched his ceremonial sleeve. Her knees had weakened, and he had held her upright. The golden mark had bloomed under his mouth, and he had felt as if the moon itself had approved him. How had that become this? He tried to blame Victor. It failed. He tried to blame Amelia. That almost worked. Then he saw Ella laugh at something Bram said near the northern table. Her shoulders loosened. Her eyes brightened without turning toward Kane at all. A worse truth rose. Ella had survived him. Not in ruins, not crawling back to his door, never waiting in some poor room with his name in her mouth. She had survived, changed, and entered a hall beside his enemy with a living mark on her neck. His pride could not bear it. The bond could not bear it. Long-starved guilt woke hungry. Kane stood. His chair scraped loud across stone. Amelia caught his wrist. Do not. He pulled free. The hall watched him cross the floor. Victor rose before Kane reached the northern table. So did 3 gray officers. Victor lifted one hand. They stopped. Ella remained seated. Kane saw that too. Once, she would have stood the moment he moved near. Habit, respect, love, fear, all braided. Now she looked at him from her chair as if he were a guest who had interrupted a meal. Ella, Victor said. Her name broke in his mouth. King Kane, she answered. The title struck him. Not Kane. Not my king either. Never made again. We need to speak. We are speaking. Alone. Victor laughed once. It held no humor. Kane's eyes flashed. This does not concern you. Victor stepped beside Ella's chair. Everything concerning my Luna concerns me. My Luna. Kane's wolf lunged. His claws pricked under his nails. The piece-tied guards shifted near the walls. Ella stood then. Not because Kane commanded it, because she chose the height. Do not start a fight in Marrowbridge, she said. Kane's gaze locked on her neck. Up close, the mark was worse. Victor's bite had covered his old shape completely. No edge of gold remained, not one. His voice dropped. Did he force you? Ella's expression hardened. Victor went still in a way that made the air dangerous. Careful, Victor said. Kane ignored him. Tell me, did Gray use your anger? Did he take advantage of you while you were alone? Ella looked at Kane for a long moment. There were so many answers she could give, sharp ones, cruel ones, public ones. She could mention Amelia's bedroom near his study, the brooch, that dinner, the old crown stayed there. She could list every night he chose comfort over truth. Instead, she gave him the answer he had denied her. I chose. Kane flinched. You do not get to call my choice another man's crime because it wounds you. Amelia appeared behind him. Kane, come back. People are staring. He did not turn. Come home, he said to Ella. The room inhaled. Amelia froze. Kane heard himself and could not stop. Come home. I will fix this. The crown can be yours again. Amelia can leave court. We can dissolve the second title. I will give you anything. Amelia made a small sound. Ella stared at him. This was the moment she had once begged for in silence. Months earlier, she would have given almost anything to hear those words. She would have wept, raged, asked questions, maybe even believed him if he had come before the old Mark died. Now they sounded like a man bargaining after burning the bridge. Anything, she asked. Hope broke over his face with such naked force that several guests looked away. Yes, she answered. Then give me the truth. Who planted the brooch? Kane's mouth closed. Amelia went white to the lips. Ella watched them both. There the answer showed itself. Not proof in a drawer, not a maid's scream. The truth moved across their faces before words could dress it. Kane turned slowly toward Amelia. What is she talking about? Amelia whispered. Too late. Kane's eyes sharpened with memory, the scratch on the clasp, Nessa's fear. Amelia's tears arriving exactly when questions did. Ella's calm denial, his own cowardice. Amelia, he said. Her lips trembled. You cannot believe her. Ella almost smiled, the old line pulled from the old shelf. Victor's voice cut in, mild and lethal. Careful, you are repeating yourself. A neutral lord near the center table rose. Lord Vere, keeper of Marrowbridge law, was an old wolf with white hair and no patience for royal theater. If an accusation of planted evidence is raised during a treaty feast, he said, it affects honor standing. It may also affect crown legitimacy, where a Luna title was altered after the accusation. Does King Kane wish this entered into record? Kane looked trapped. Amelia whispered, Say no. Everyone heard her. Lord Vere's brows lifted. Ella folded her hands before her. She felt calm in a distant way, as if watching a storm from inside a stone house. Kane's pride fought his shame. For once, shame won. Bring Amelia's maid, he said. Amelia grabbed his sleeve. Do not. Kane looked down at her hand. He remembered Ella asking, Do you trust me? Then he remembered turning away. Slowly, he removed Amelia's fingers from his sleeve. Bring Nessa, he said again. The maid had traveled with Amelia. She arrived trembling so hard that the pearls on her cap clicked. Under Marrowbridge law, treaty servants could be questioned if their acts had political consequence. Lord Vere administered the old oath over a cup of salted water and moon ash. Nessa tried to hold out for less than a minute. Then she broke. Amelia had given her the handkerchief. The drawer had been named by Amelia. No harm would come, Amelia had promised, only a fright to humble the Luna. The king needed proof, Amelia had said, that Ella was not worthy of the trust she held. The hall listened in absolute silence. Kane stood as if each sentence struck flesh from him. Ella felt no triumph. That surprised her. She had imagined truth would taste sharp and satisfying. Instead, it tasted clean and sad. Amelia fell to her knees before Kane. "I did it because I loved you," she cried. "She was taking you from everyone, from your blood, from your house, from me. She made you forget who stood beside you when you were young. I only wanted you to see." Kane stared down at her. At last, he saw the shape of the thing he had fed. Amelia had lied, yes, but he had wanted lies that spared him effort. She had planted evidence, but he had accepted it because doubt was easier than defending a wife who no longer flattered him. She had reached for a crown, but he had placed it within reach. His guilt became too large to blame away. He turned to Ella. "I am sorry." The words were bare, no king in them. Ella held that gaze without softening. Once, those words would have been water in a desert. Now they were rain on a field already replanted. "I believe you," she said. Kane took a step toward her. Victor remained where he was. No further motion was needed. Ella continued, "But apology is not a rope you throw around someone after they reach shore." Kane stopped. Amelia sobbed behind him, but he did not look back. Lord Vere spoke into the silence. "The record will state that Lady Amelia Black procured false evidence against the former royal Luna, affecting court standing and title transfer. Marrowbridge recognizes Ella Grey as bonded Luna of the Northern Grey House by clear mark and public acknowledgement." The words settled law over what already lived in her skin. Amelia lifted her head. "That cannot stand. The crown is mine. Kane gave it to me." Her hands flew to the moonstone crown. No one moved to take it. That somehow made it worse. Kane looked at the crown as if seeing it for the first time since the banquet. Silver, blue stones, one chipped. Ella's old grief sitting on Amelia's hair. "Take it off," he said. Amelia stared. "What?" "Take it off. You cannot do this to me. I did worse to her. I will not continue it for you." Amelia's face twisted. For a moment the softness vanished. In its place stood the woman beneath, frightened and furious and empty-handed. "You promised," she hissed. "You promised I would have a place." "I promised many things I had no right to promise." The answer silenced her. Slowly, shaking, Amelia removed the crown. The hall watched the moonstones lower from her hair. Kane reached for it, then stopped. His hand hovered over the silver as if it might burn. At last he took it. He turned toward Ella. "It was yours," he said. Victor's jaw tightened. Ella touched his sleeve once, a quiet signal. Kane held out the crown. "Take it back, please." The word please did what the command never could. It revealed how far he had fallen. Ella looked at the crown. She remembered its first weight, its cold shine, the way she had once touched the moonstones in mirrors to confirm she had not dreamed herself into palace silk. She remembered how it had become heavier month by month until taking it off felt like removing a chain. She did not reach for it. "No," she said. Kane's face crumpled before he mastered it. "Ella," Kane said. "That crown belongs to a house that did not know how to honor its own vow. Melt it, lock it away, give it to someone who wants the burden. I have another life." She turned to Victor. His eyes were on her, not Kane. No prideful smirk. No public claim beyond the steady presence of his hand near hers. "We are leaving," she said. Victor nodded. "Good." The wine was poor. A few northern soldiers coughed into their fists. Ella almost laughed, and that almost laugh saved her from shaking. Kane stepped into their path. "Do not go, not yet." Victor's patience thinned. "Move." Kane ignored him. His eyes stayed on Ella. "Tell me there is no chance. Say it plainly, and I will let you pass." The cruelty of that request lay in its desperation. He wanted a final wound he could understand. He wanted her to become the executioner so he could stop being the man who had built the gallows. Ella would not take his burden. But she would give him truth. "There is no chance," she said. Kane's breath left him. "Not because Victor marked me, nor because Amelia lied to you, not because the court watched us break. There is no chance because the day I asked whether you trusted me, you chose convenience over love. Everything after that only revealed the choice." He closed his eyes. She stepped around him. This time he did not stop her. At the doors, Amelia's voice broke free. "What does she have that I do not?" Ella paused. The hall seemed to lean toward her answer. She looked back at Amelia, still kneeling, crownless, with tear tracks shining on her cheeks. "Nothing you could steal," Ella said. Then she left. Outside, Marrowbridge's night was cold enough to clear wine from the blood. The river moved under the 3 bridges, black and loud against stone. Torches snapped in the wind. Victor draped his cloak around Ella's shoulders before she noticed she was cold. They walked without speaking until the hall doors closed behind them. Only then did her knees weaken. Victor caught her at once. "Easy." "I am not fainting." "Good. I dislike carrying paperwork and people on the same night." She laughed once, then pressed a hand over her mouth as tears rose without warning. Victor's expression changed. "Ella." "I am not sad," she said quickly. "I think I am angry, or relieved, or tired. Those can share a room." She leaned against the bridge wall and looked down at the water. "I thought truth would give back something. Did it not?" "It gave me proof. I already knew." Victor stood beside her, close enough to warm her shoulder. "Proof matters when others lied around you. It may not heal the cut, but it stops people calling the blood imagination." She breathed through that. Inside the hall, muffled voices rose. Orders. Accusations. Amelia crying. Kane saying something too low to hear. That world had once owned every beat of her heart. Now it sounded far away. "What happens to Amelia?" Ella asked. "Marrowbridge will enter the confession. Kane must either punish her or look too weak to rule his own table. Her Corin debts will surface once protection thins. People like her always owe someone." Ella looked at him. "You knew about the debts?" "Suspected. Confirmed this week." "You did not tell me." "I would have if needed. Tonight she made it unnecessary." Ella studied his profile in torchlight. "You prepared for more than dinner." "So did she." "That was true." Victor turned toward her. "Does that trouble you?" "Not really. I am learning the North does not enter rooms unarmed. Only foolish people do." She touched the mark under her hair. It warmed at her fingers. "I entered the palace unarmed." "You entered with trust. That is not foolish when offered to someone worthy. Kane made it foolish after the fact. That fault is his." The words settled softly, but they settled. Hooves clattered beyond the gate as northern escorts prepared to leave. The night smelled of wet stone and pine tar from Victor's men. Ella straightened. "Take me home," she said. Victor looked at her carefully. "North?" "North." His mouth eased. "Good." They crossed the bridge together. Behind them, in the feast hall, Kane stood with the silver crown in his hands. One moonstone was chipped. Wine stained the inner rim. Amelia sat guarded near the wall, no longer crying because tears had stopped working. Lord Vere dictated the confession to a clerk. Every scratch of the quill sounded louder than music. Kane did not hear most of it. He stared at the doors. The second time Ella left him, He understood she would not return. That knowledge did not strike like rage. It sank like winter water. Cold, deep, permanent. He looked down at the crown and finally saw the cruelty of its beauty. 7 generations of kings had used it to name a Luna. He had used it to punish one. "Your Majesty," the Chancellor said quietly, "what are your orders regarding Lady Amelia?" Amelia lifted her face. Fear stripped her younger. Kane felt no tenderness. That frightened him. He had mistaken pity, nostalgia, desire, and vanity for love. Now that the illusion broke, he saw only a woman who had lied and a mirror of his own weakness. "She will be confined until Marrowbridge law finishes its record," he said. "Then she will answer before our court." "Kane," Amelia whispered. He flinched at his name in her mouth. "Do not call me brother again." Her face collapsed. Kane turned away before pity could make another disaster. That night, he did not sleep. He sat in a guest chamber with the crown on the table and the cracked mark burning at his neck. Near dawn, he took out paper and wrote a letter. "Ella." He stopped. What could follow that name? "I am sorry," she had heard it. "Come back." She had refused. "I love you." He had made those words useless. His pen hovered until ink fell in a dark spot on the page. At last he wrote only one line. "You deserve trust before regret taught me its price." He sealed nothing, sent nothing. Some letters exist only to show the writer how late he is. In the north, Ella returned to work 3 days after Marrowbridge. Bram said she should rest. She ignored him. Victor said nothing and placed a stack of appeal forms on her desk, all unsigned. "Coward," she said. "Efficient coward," he answered. The camp had already heard every version of the feast. Soldiers improved stories by nature. In one telling, Ella threw the crown into Kane's soup. Another version gave Victor a butter knife against 3 Southern guards. Bram preferred the version where Amelia confessed because Ella stared so coldly that the truth froze out of her mouth. Ella corrected none of them except the butter knife. "It was a table knife," Victor said when Bram repeated it. "That does not help," Ella told him. Life did not become gentle. The North remained itself. A fever moved through the West tents in late winter, and Ella spent 4 nights rationing willow bark, clean cloth, and broth. A bridge washed out in spring thaw. 2 patrols returned with frostbite after ignoring her boot rotation schedule, and she made their captain sign a public apology to the cobblers. A merchant tried to sell rotten oats under fresh sacks. Victor found him tied to his own wagon with a note in Ella's handwriting listing the refund due. "Was the knot necessary?" Victor asked. He tried to leave. "Was the second knot necessary?" He complained. Victor nodded. "Fair." The men began calling her Lady Quartermaster before they called her Lady Grey. She preferred it. When summer came, Victor took her to the ridge above the main camp. From there, the northern lands stretched in layers of pine, river, stone, and blue distance. Watchtowers marked the passes. Smoke rose from villages tucked against hills. "This is not as rich as Kane's south," Victor said. "No," he said. "The winters are brutal. The roads break. Half the lords south of Marrowbridge think we are useful only when something threatens them. You are making a poor marriage offer if that is what this is." He glanced at her. "This is a warning." "I know," Victor said. "I will not give you a moonstone crown. Grey Lunas wear iron at oath ceremonies and mud the rest of the year." "Good. Moonstone catches too much light." Victor looked at the horizon. His jaw shifted, the only sign of nerves she had ever learned to read. "Stay," he said. "Not because of the mark, not because of Kane. Stay because you want this life with me when no one is watching." Ella thought of Greyford, where she had learned stitches. She thought of the palace, where love became performance. She thought of Orland's attic, the sewing tent, the mare with the silly braid, the first ledger Victor trusted to her, and the night his mark covered what shame had left. "I am already staying," she said. He turned then. "Say it again." "I am staying." Victor kissed her on the ridge with no witnesses except wind. It was not careful for long. Below them, the camp bells rang for evening count. Ella laughed against his mouth because duty waited even for romance. Victor groaned as if personally betrayed by logistics. "You chose a quartermaster," she said. "This is your fault." "I chose badly for leisure, well for survival." "That may be the sweetest thing you have said." "I can try worse." "Please do not." He smiled then, rare and real. In autumn, Ella returned once to Greyford. She went without ceremony. Victor rode with her and 6 guards who pretended not to listen when she rehearsed what to say to her parents. The tailor shop still stood beside the square. The sign had faded. Her father had more gray in his beard. Her mother dropped a spool when Ella entered. For a moment, no one moved. Then her mother crossed the shop and held her so tightly that Ella could barely breathe. Her father stood behind them, eyes wet, jaw stubborn. "You should have written sooner," he said. Ella laughed and cried at once. "I know." They had heard stories. Everyone had. Some said she betrayed Kane. Others said Kane cast her out. A few said Victor kidnapped her. One drunken version made her a northern witch who cursed the royal crown. Her mother touched the mark on her neck. "Are you safe?" Ella looked through the shop window. Victor stood outside in the square, pretending interest in a rack of dyed thread. He looked deeply uncomfortable among ribbons. "Yes," Ella said, "I am safe. More than that, I am useful. I am wanted." Her father followed her gaze. "That red-haired lord?" "Victor. He looks like he argues with doors." "Only if they are badly made." Her mother laughed through tears. That evening, Victor ate stew at the Vale table, while Ella's father asked blunt questions about troop pay, winter stores, and whether northern wolves treated women with sense. Victor answered every question plainly. When asked what he wanted from Ella, he set down his spoon. Her counsel when I am wrong, her skill in places where I am blind, and her company if she keeps choosing mine. Ella's mother pressed a hand to her mouth. Her father grunted, "Better answer than poetry." Victor nodded. "I dislike poetry under questioning." Ella kicked him under the table. He did not react, but his mark warmed. Before leaving Greyford, Ella visited the square where Kane had first found her. It looked smaller now. The mud, the well, the tailor shops, the bakery with cracked blue shutters. No bells rang, no white horses waited. She stood where she had dropped the basket of gloves. For a younger version of herself, she felt tenderness. That girl had not been foolish to believe in love. She had been given a vow in front of a kingdom. Trust was not a sin. Staying too long after trust was broken had been the wound, and even that wound had taught her how to leave. Victor waited near the well. "Regret?" he asked. "Some. Not the kind that calls me back." "Good. I would hate to fight a memory. They cheat." She smiled. "You would lose." "Probably." His honesty warmed her more than victory would have. The first council after her return tested that claim of home. Gray's Keep did not have Kane's painted ceilings or polished gold doors. Its council room had stone walls, narrow windows, and a long oak table burned in 3 places by old candles. The chairs did not match. Half the men at the table wore travel mud because northern problems rarely waited for clean boots. Ella entered with Victor and found every eye on her neck. Some looked at the new mark with respect, others looked with worry. A few saw only a southern scandal wearing northern colors. Lord Darrow, a hill baron with a white beard and a voice like gravel, spoke before anyone sat. "A public confession in Marrowbridge is useful," he said. "It is not the same as trust." Victor's hand stilled on the chair back. Ella answered before he could. "No, my lord, Trust is built after records survive bad weather. Darrow narrowed his eyes. Pretty answer. Practical one. I have brought the last 6 months of grain movement, boot losses, wagon repairs, fever stores, and late winter deaths by route. If you want to know whether I serve the North, start with the numbers. They are less charming than rumor and harder to flatter. Bram coughed into his fist. It sounded suspiciously like approval. The ledgers went around the table. Men who had expected a love story found columns, seals, and uncomfortable proof. Ella showed where a Southern tariff delay had cost 3 patrols a week of dried beans. She showed how a bridge repair near Orland would save more horses than 2 new breeding contracts. She showed which villages had sent sons to the army without receiving proper salt credits in return. Darrow stopped frowning halfway through the 3rd page. A younger lord tried a softer attack. Lady Grey, surely military accounts are not the only measure of belonging. Blood matters in old houses. Ella looked at him. Blood matters when it bleeds for the people it claims. Otherwise, it is only a family story told over better wine. The room went silent. Victor leaned back in his chair. His face stayed calm, but the mark at his neck warmed. Ella felt the answer in her own. Darrow grunted. Let her finish. So she did. By sunset, the council had approved 3 supply stations, a revised winter road tax, and a rule requiring noble houses to report stored grain before requesting army escort. It made nobody comfortable. That was how Ella knew it mattered. Outside the council room, Victor walked beside her down the drafty passage. You enjoyed that, he said. Parts of it. Darrow likes you. Darrow accused me of being untrusted before breakfast. That is how he begins affection. Northern manners remain terrible. You are adapting. She glanced at him. I am improving them. 2 weeks later, the first letter came from a Southern widow. It had been forwarded through 3 towns and arrived stained with rain. The woman wrote that her husband had died on a patrol. Kane's court had mismanaged before Ella's reforms. She had heard the former Luna now held authority in the north. R.N. Ella said N. No money was requested. R.N. She asked how to make a petition no steward could bury. Ella read the letter twice. Then she wrote instructions in plain language. She explained dates, witnesses, seals, copies, and how to make a clerk sign receipt before taking a page away. She sent the answer with 2 blank petition forms and a small packet of thread because the widow had mentioned mending for soldiers to pay rent. More letters followed. A miller's daughter wanted to learn accounts. R.N. 1 dismissed palace maid asked whether northern camps hired women who could read. R.N. from a hill village. A healer asked for clean cloth standards after losing 3 children to fever in reused bandages. None of them called Ella a fallen Luna. None asked about Kane's regret. They wrote as if her survival had opened a door they had not known existed. Ella began keeping those letters in a cedar box under her desk. Victor found her one night tying the newest bundle with blue string. More petitions? Not exactly. He waited. They are women asking how to stand where men prefer them kneeling. Victor's expression darkened. Give me names. That is not always the answer. It is frequently satisfying. I need schools more than broken noses. He considered this with visible disappointment. Both can exist, he said. Ella smiled despite herself. First schools, then we discuss noses. The next spring, Gray's Keep opened a record school in the old armory loft. It smelled of chalk, dust, leather, and ambition. 12 girls came the first week. By midsummer, there were 30, plus 4 boys whose fathers complained until they learned the girls could calculate supply shares faster. Ella taught the first lesson herself. She wrote 1 sentence on the slate. A record is a memory that cannot be bullied into changing. The youngest girl raised a hand. Can records lie? Yes, Ella said. That is why you learn to make them answer questions. The girls bent over their slates. Below the loft, soldiers repaired harness and pretended not to listen. Bram stood in the doorway with his arms folded. You know this will cause trouble. Most useful things do. Darrow sent 2 granddaughters. Ella looked up. He did? Told them to beat the boys. That sounds like affection. You are learning. That evening, when the room emptied, Ella remained alone among chalk dust and stacked slates. The new school was not a crown, not a title, not a song. It was better. It was a door with hinges she had chosen, and a latch other women could lift. Victor came to fetch her for supper and found her staring at the slate. Too much? He asked. Not too much. Bigger than I expected. He read the sentence on the board. Good line. Careful, you are praising writing. I praise useful weapons. Ella took his hand. Then help me keep this one sharp. Always. The word was plain, but plain words had become her favorite kind. They either held or they did not. Victor's held. South of Marrowbridge, Kane's reign changed in quieter ways. Amelia's trial exposed more than the brooch. Letters from Corin surfaced. Debts. Promises of court access. A list of gifts from Lady Marcel, whose merchant ships had hoped for reduced port taxes once Amelia held seals. Nessa testified again. 2 palace servants admitted taking coin to repeat rumors about Ella's fading mark. Kane listened to all of it from the judgment chair. Each fact was a stone added to a wall he could no longer climb. The court wanted Amelia destroyed. Some demanded exile. Others wanted imprisonment. A few southern nobles, eager to cleanse themselves, pretended they had always doubted her. Kane saw through them because shame had sharpened him. He stripped Amelia of title, crown access, and royal allowance. Her Corin patron was banned from trade privileges. Amelia was sent to a remote coastal convent under guard, not because Kane wished mercy, but because execution would have let everyone call the matter finished too easily. She left the palace in a closed carriage. No crowds gathered. No one threw flowers. At the gate, she looked back once, expecting perhaps to see Kane at a window. He was in council. For the first time in years, he was reading every petition himself. Punishing Amelia did not cleanse him. It only removed one excuse. Kane restored Ella's name and royal record. He declared the theft accusation false. Compensation went to servants dismissed during Amelia's rise. Finally, he ordered the Luna crown locked in the old treasury until the council could decide whether such a title should ever be used again as personal favor. The nobles called these reforms wise. Kane knew they were late. At night, the cracked mark still hurt. It hurt most when he did something Ella had once urged and he had dismissed. Standard boot inspections for northern patrols. Public evidence rules for household accusations. Separate seal authority for consorts so affection could not replace law. Grain audits written plainly instead of buried under noble language. Her absence governed him better than his pride ever had. Once, nearly a year after Marrowbridge, Kane rode north for a formal border signing. He saw Ella from a distance in the courtyard of Gray's Keep. She wore a dark green riding coat, her hair braided under a plain pin. A young clerk hurried beside her with papers. 2 captains listened while she pointed toward wagons. Victor stood nearby with a map, waiting for her to finish before speaking. Waiting. Kane remembered interrupting her in council because he assumed her thought could survive delay, while his could not. Ella laughed at something the clerk said. Victor looked at her, and the severe line of his face changed. Kane's wolf stirred, not with claim now, but with grief. Mine, it whispered from habit. No, Kane answered, surprising himself. Hers. He did not approach. The treaty was signed by officers before noon. Victor met him in the outer hall afterward. They stood as enemies who had learned the cost of careless war. Gray, Kane said. Alpha. For once, Victor did not sharpen the title into insult. Kane looked toward the courtyard. Is she happy? Victor's eyes chilled. Ask her yourself if you want an answer. I have no right. Correct. The word landed without cruelty. That almost made it worse. Kane nodded once. Keep the border quiet, Victor said. That is the apology the North can use. And Ella? Victor held his gaze. Leave her peace. Kane left before sunset. He did not look back at the keep. That restraint became the only gift he had left to give. Years later, Northern children learned a cleaner version of the story. They learned of Ella Gray, the Luna who counted grain better than lords counted pride. Winter roads with close supply stations became part of her legacy, and patrols stopped losing toes to frost. Village girls trained as clerks, map readers, leather workers, and healers, not because every girl had to serve an army, but because skill gave choices where beauty and birth did not. As for Victor Gray, children learned he hated waste, loved blunt speech, and discovered that a good quartermaster could defeat more enemies than a reckless charge. Less was taught about Kane, though Southern records kept his reforms. Ella never asked songs to spare him or punish him. Songs simplify people, and she had lived through the damage simple stories caused. When young women came to her with tears over faithless mates, ambitious cousins, cruel families, or promises turned to cages, Ella did not tell them to stop loving. That would have been another lie. She told them to count actions. Words are thread, she would say, holding up a seam between two fingers. Useful, necessary, sometimes beautiful. But thread without knots pulls loose under strain. Watch where people knot their words. Watch what holds when pride, fear, and desire pull hard. Some understood at once. Most had to learn by pain. Ella did not judge them for that. One winter evening, long after the Marrowbridge feast, she stood in the Grey Keep's upper hall while snow pressed against the windows. The army had settled into winter quarters. All ledgers were balanced. Pepper stew scented the kitchens. Somewhere below, Bram's grandchildren were chasing each other with wooden swords despite 3 separate orders to stop. Victor entered with snow in his hair. The West Road held, he said. Your stone drains worked. Of course they did. I told the engineers you would say that. She looked up from a stack of training rosters. Did they enjoy being warned? Not now. Good. He crossed the room and stood behind her chair. His hand rested at the back of her neck, thumb brushing the silver-gray mark. Even after years, it warmed under his touch. You have ink on your cheek, he said. You have snow melting onto my accounts. My flaw is more seasonal. She turned and caught his wrist before he could retreat. The mark on his neck glowed in answer, steady as banked fire. Do you ever think about that night? She asked. He knew which night. The crown itself, those doors, a bridge in the rain, and the mark under moonlight. Yes. What do you think? Victor considered before answering, as he did when truth mattered. I think Kane believed losing you began when you walked out. He was wrong. He lost you each time he asked you to carry pain quietly, so his life stayed easy. You leaving only made the loss visible. Ella sat with that. Outside, wind moved against the keep, but the walls held. And you? She asked. I think I gained you each time you found another reason to stay. Not when I marked you. Not when law named you. Every day after, when you kept choosing this place. She smiled. That was almost poetry. Victor looked mildly alarmed. I apologize. She laughed and pulled him down to kiss her. The silver mark at her neck warmed between them, not as proof of ownership, but as memory of a choice kept alive by daily honor. Far south, the old moonstone crown remained locked in the treasury. Dust gathered along its silver leaves. The chipped stone never repaired cleanly. Kings after Kane saw it before oath days and were told why it stayed unworn. A crown could name a Luna. It could not make one. A bond could mark skin. It could not replace trust. And no love, no matter how faded, survived long in the hands of someone who treated loyalty as something to spend and regret as something to pay with later. Ella learned that leaving was not the opposite of love. Sometimes leaving was the last honest shape love could take before it became obedience. She had entered the palace as a tailor's daughter chosen by the moon. She left it barefoot in rain with coins hidden in her hem. In the north, she became something no crown had been able to make her. Whole by her own choosing.